Hey guys, what's up? It is Ripe again, back with more Entitled People. If you enjoy these story compilations, please don't forget to tell me in the comments, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled, Neighbor Won't Turn His Floodlights Off. Some years ago we had some new neighbors move in next door. Nice enough people, but we had a problem with them. The husband traveled a lot and his wife was afraid of just about everything, the dark, thunderstorms, you name it. The problem was the floodlights over their garage doors. She would leave them on all night, every night, even though you could not see them from inside of their house. They were positioned such that they would shine into our bedroom at night. We were not able to block them effectively with our curtains. We asked them politely several times if they could turn them off at night since they served no effective purpose. They adamantly refused. I offered to pay for a timer that would control them. No way they would consider it. I thought about taking the bulbs out, shooting them out with my pellet gun, etc. The solution that I arrived at was to simply loosen them up enough that they would not come on. Since they could not see them from inside the house, it was about 5 to 6 months before they realized that they were not working. They screwed them back in. I waited a couple of weeks and unscrewed them again. Another few months went by. Finally one day my neighbor asked me if I ever had any trouble with my outdoor lights. I told him yes, as a matter of fact I did. I said that they would loosen up occasionally and I would have to retighten them. I blamed it on vibration from the traffic on our street. He said that he had the same problem. I told him that I finally just gave up and left them off. He eventually did the same. We were happy with the final outcome and we were able to keep peace in the neighborhood. And guys, I'm curious, ever since this pandemic started, did you have more or less trouble with your neighbors? Let us know in the comments if you have something to share. And the next one is titled, Mom wanted to give my sister my house and sister says I stole her dream. When me and my husband decided to move, we wanted to live on our own spot of land instead of the cookie cutter community and no HOA. The house was still mortgaged. It was a 2-story, 5-bedroom and 3.5-bathroom house. And it was less than a year old. Me and my husband at the time had no kids, only 2 dogs, and while we loved the house, the taxes and HOA fees and maintenance was really annoying to us and overly priced, and we wanted a little more privacy too, because our neighbors were literally 2 feet away from our own home. We were at a small family gathering with my parents and siblings discussing our options about where we wanted to move to and if we wanted to build or buy a temporary mobile home to save up for our true dream house. I noticed my sister pull my mother aside and were whispering about something, but I ignored it as my dad was telling us about some great opportunities in some nice country-like areas, which was what we were hoping for. I always wanted to raise sheep and chickens and needed an area that allowed that. Later that night, my mom and sister asked if they could speak to me privately, which was never a good sign, but I sighed and we went into my mom's bedroom and closed the door like they were getting ready to punish me or something, which made me anxious.
Listen honey, me and I have been talking and we were thinking it would be a really good idea if you sold your house to A. She has 3 kids and the house she lives in now is so small. This would be a major help to her and her family.
My mom was using a tone like someone would use for a 5-year-old and I was 33 at the time. Well, that's not a problem. She just needs to go through the proper channels like everyone else and I can get you in contact with our realtors easily and you can take it from there. Thinking she wanted to buy the house legit.
No, you don't understand.
My sister whined as she looked at mom all teary-eyed. She would sow this so my mom would take pity on her and apparently they had discussed this before coming to me.
Honey, your sister's credit is not good, so she would never qualify for such a big loan to buy your house. So we were thinking that maybe you could transfer the house into her and her husband's name, but you keep paying the mortgage. And your sister will pay you under the table what is owed. That way she can get the house and you won't be losing any money over it, since she will be paying you back after all.
Still talking to me all sweet like. What? Are you kidding me? So you have any idea what the mortgage is? It is $2,500 a month. A and you and your husband barely make $25,000 a year. That is when he actually has a job and you don't work at all. Not to mention the $1,500 land taxes and the $800 HOA fees. I understand you want a better place, but I know for a fact there would be a month you would fall on hard times like you always do and not be able to pay for that month, and I cannot afford to keep you there if you don't pay, which we both know will happen eventually. You need to buy this house legit or not at all. I'm not making any kind of deals because we need to sell this house to buy our new place anyway. I was about to leave, but my sister busted into tears at this.
Mommy, me and husband will work really hard to pay you every month, I swear. We need this place because we would never be able to get a place like this on our own. This is our only chance.
She began to cry into my mother's chest at this.
You need to stop being so selfish. You and your husband are bragging in the living room about building a house and getting your own land and everything, knowing your sister is having so many financial difficulties and raising 3 children.
My mom yelled at me. Exactly my point. She's always struggling financially. How can she afford $2,500 a month on mortgage alone? I would eventually end up just paying her mortgage all the time because her husband changes jobs like I change underwear and I simply cannot afford it. And since the house would be in her name, then I would have no way to kick her out. Eventually I would have to stop paying and the bank would repossess the house and I would be left with nothing financially, which we need to fund getting a new place, not to mention damaging my credit score, which I worked very hard to make it good. Harsh, yes, but the truth often is.
I cannot believe you're doing this just to spite me. You're stealing my dream and not even giving me something in return.
She began to whine even more. What are you talking about? Stealing your dream? I was really confused.
I was always the one who wanted to buy my own little spot of land and build a little house. You were talking about raising chickens and planting a garden. Those were my dreams and you are stealing them, you selfish woman.
She yelled. Oh wow, imagine that. I want to be a homeowner. You are the only one in the world that wanted that. I guess mom stole your dream too, right? She owns land and a house and gardens all the time. And oh my god, B's sister does too, and she raises chickens. We all stole your dream. I was being overly sarcastic because it was so ridiculous.
That's different. They are older than me, but you're younger. You shouldn't upstage your older sister like this. Just because you and your husband make more money than us, it is not fair.
She was still crying and making a huge scene, but I was done with this at this point. The answer is no. You want the house? You buy it. Legit, not under the table, and certainly not me footing the bill and losing a ton of cash that I know inevitably will happen. And I am not stealing anything from you. If I want a little plot of land and to grow a garden and raise chickens, that is my choice. You have nothing to do with how I live my life. If this is such a reasonable request, mom, then why don't you buy her a house legit, put it in her name, and just let her pay you under the table too, instead of asking your daughter to take care of her sister? A is your child, not mine, and I will not spend our hard-earned money supporting her and her family. A was throwing a huge fit after that, crying and begging my mom to make me do this like we were still little kids or something. It was a pretty sad sight to see her throwing a tantrum like a 2-year-old. Yeah, and she is the golden child, really? I told my husband we needed to leave and we spent the drive home with me telling him what my mom and sister were trying to pull over on us. He responded. Even if you did agree, did she really think I would go for it? I like your family and all, but damn, your sister is something else altogether. Stealing her dream? What was that all about? He asked as we laughed about it a little while. We have our own land now and are living in a double wide trailer that we love, 5 bedrooms and 3 full bathrooms, and thankfully no stairs, no HOA, much cheaper mortgage and taxes, and wonderful privacy. I could walk around naked with all the windows open and no one would ever see me, not that I do, but I could if I wanted to. My sister has moved twice within the last 2 years and is always renting because their credit is terrible and they cannot get a loan to buy any house. I just heard from my mother that they have been sending their money almost monthly for groceries because they can barely afford to buy food. Yeah, and you think she could have afforded that mortgage. I don't regret my decision one bit and I love my little vegetable garden that I make homemade soup with often. And I gotta say guys, this sister is probably the embodiment of entitlement, and I suppose if you look up entitlement in the dictionary, then there should be a picture of this sister. Have you ever met a really entitled person like the one in the story in real life? Let us know in the comments. And by the way, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and also like the video if you want to support me. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one was posted by user Mamasan on our own subreddit, and it is titled, "Am I the jerk?" Entitled diva sneaks in with a bullhorn, right past the rights. Funny thing about me is I'm a morning person and hate being late. My dear husband is the same. When my boys started school, it was not hard to get them up. However, as the teen years approached, they became difficult. At first, I just flipped on the lights and loudly told them to get up. Next was to pull covers off and sometimes drag them out of bed by their ankles. When they got too big / strong for that, I trained our pair of small dogs, 16 pounds each, to run into their rooms and jump on them. The doors were conveniently right across from each other in the hall. I had those two little dogs running backward and forward to get them up each morning until the boys convinced the dogs to lay down and sleep with them. I then resorted to a spray bottle filled with water and they rebelled, tattled to death about me getting them wet. So, new method, Nerf balls and guns. This worked for a while, but the boys learned to hide them. This resulted in me getting an air horn. Dad convinced his sons to quit fighting me or he would take away their gaming consoles. I think my husband was afraid of what I might try next. When my grandkids started to stay over on school nights, their uncle warned them about my wake-up habits. They did not believe him. After I dragged one of them out of his bed by his ankles, they decided to believe him. And when I told them to get up, they got up. And Mama-san, I think I need to book you to get my girlfriend out of bed. She is definitely the opposite of a morning person, but I am definitely also a morning person. How it is for you guys? Do you have a problem with getting up early? Let us know in the comments. And the next one is titled, "You're going to throw your waste into my garden? Great." I think this might be a stretch, but I really cannot think of a subreddit where this would fit, and I wanted to tell it. My uncle's neighbors really hate him for literally no reason, and one day he walked into his garden to find 3 plastic bags, the heavy-duty ones you get dog food / cattle feed in, lying on his lawn, and he knew immediately where they were from since he only has one neighbor, and the bags looked as if they had lazily been thrown over the shared fence. 2 of the bags were filled with leaf litter and the other was full of apples that looked like they had been slightly eaten by worms. Obviously the neighbors didn't want to eat them. My uncle, let's call him Flair, does all sorts of gardening in his spare time and he thought that the neighbors threw him their waste stuff for him to use, so he went around to their house and asked if they were the ones who threw him the leaf litter and the apples. They shut the door in his face without answering, and at this point Flea realized they did it maliciously because they couldn't be bothered to take their waste anywhere. Most of you probably know that leaf litter is great for keeping soil healthy, and my uncle realizes this too and decides to make compost from the leaves to use for his onions. He grows large onions for an annual competition, don't ask. After he has a bag full of his homemade leaf litter fertilizer, he waits until one of the neighbors leaves for work and then goes out into his front garden and makes a big deal of spreading the fertilizer in front of the neighbor, exaggerating every slight movement and noise. With the apples, however, he decided to make, in combination with his own apples, some sort of beer / wine / cider hybrid, and he also made sure that at least one of the neighbors saw him using their apples throughout the process. The drink was pretty good in the end, if not a bit strong. The icing on the cake for me though is when he neatly folded up the plastic bags and left them piled in the neighbor's garden with a rock on top of them in which he etched the word "more". You know guys, that reminds me, here in Thailand it is not easy to come by some good apple cider. Are you guys fans of apple cider? Personally, I really love it, but I gotta say, the one that we drink in Germany is just absolutely outstanding and it unfortunately beats the apple cider that is available here, which is mainly from the UK. which by the way is not half bad either, but still. And the last one is titled, Busybody Stay-at-Home Mom Neighbor Harasses Me Until My Restraining Order Kicks Her Out of Her House. I lived across the street from a very bored stay-at-home mom whose excess idle time turned her into an insufferable busybody. Her husband backed out of the driveway and slammed into my roommate's car parked on the curb. He apologized, gave us his insurance info and took care of it. He was never a problem because he accepted responsibility for what he did. His wife, however, demanded that we never ever park any cars at the curb again because
we cannot get out of our driveway otherwise.
The street was very wide. She was just completely unable to accept that the accident was her husband's fault and figured we were somehow responsible for it, ergo we were responsible for preventing it in the future. We told her that we would avoid parking there whenever possible, but that we still had the legal right to park on the street and that if necessary we would still do so, and that it was her and her husband's responsibility to avoid hitting other people's legally parked cars when backing out of the driveway. She was not happy with that answer, but just told us we better stay out of her family's way and stormed off. One day she came storming over, banging on the front door, cussing us out. We got her on our security camera saying,
if you don't move that effing car in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to effing total it with my truck. It will be your fault and you will have to pay for the damage to my vehicle.
To this I simply responded, I don't know whose car that is, but I didn't park it there. I have you on camera, so if you do anything to that car, I will have to call the police and hand over this tape. She then threatened to sue me for invasion of privacy for recording her and still insisted that we move the car even though it was not our property. We just ignored her and she did not do anything to the car. We did keep the recording though. A few weeks later I had a friend visit from out of town. He parked his car on the curb and then started unloading some stuff from his trunk. She came storming out, screaming and cussing at him.
I have told you repeatedly never park your effing car on this curb. If you don't move it, I'm going to total it and you can pay for a new goddamn car, as well as the damage you do to mine.
He tried to calm her down and asked if there was somewhere else he could park, and she replied,
you can park it in hell, because that is where you will be after I kill you.
Unfortunately for her, he had his dashcam running the whole time and it captured everything. He called the police and she was arrested for threatening to commit vandalism and for threatening violence. A few days later, she left a long-winded hate letter in our mailbox. It was written as if it were an open letter from the entire neighborhood, and it basically said,
nobody knows who you are,
and
everyone wishes you would move away,
and
nobody wants you living in our neighborhood.
The thing is, she forgot about the security cameras. I took the video of her opening my mailbox, which included her taking all our letters out of the mailbox and riffling through them. And I gave them to the post office. This led to her getting arrested for a second time that week. After that, we used her 2 arrests, our collection of security and dashcam footage, and her letter to get a restraining order against her that actually prohibited her from entering her own home, and then we called the police every time we saw her because she was in violation of the order. She ended up having to live in a hotel room, and her husband came over, apologized to us and asked if we would drop the restraining order so his wife could come home. I told him I would do it, but only if she wrote me, my wife, our roommates and the friend of mine she threatened a 1-page apology for her harassment, and that she would promise to never ever contact us again for any reason whatsoever moving forward. I received no apology and the house went on the market a week later. Some effing people. And guys, unfortunately we have already reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and if you haven't already, please also go to patreon.com/ripeyoutube, where I upload exclusive Reddit videos starting at just $3 a month. This is a great way to support me in case you are interested, and the chance for me to become independent from YouTube revenue. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.